with them sharing their knowledge. And so I do that on their behalf as much as anything with you guys today. So just a little bit of background about Miniclip. We are a global publisher. We also develop games. We distribute those games to around 250 million monthly active users worldwide. So I'll give you a bit more information about some of our experience and methods in global launches for those games. As some of you may know, our games are popular throughout South Asia and India especially. And of those titles mentioned, you probably, if you're familiar with anything, familiar with April Pool, Korom, and also Mini Militia is a game that we run. We are growing as a group of companies. We work closely with our colleagues in studios like Masomo, who do Headball 2, and Ilion, who do Bubble Shooter. And so very much the future of our organization is working with great developers to launch new products. The core company is originating in 2001. We were initially a publisher and developer of online games through our web portal, miniclip.com, and then we moved to mobile platforms. Most of the internal group studios are in Europe. As I mentioned, our strategic partnerships now see us opening studios in Turkey, Israel, and in other locations in the UK. So we have been fortunate in the last 10 years. I say fortunate, we've worked hard for it. In the last 10 years, we've launched over 45 titles, and we've grown our position in the market to be #1 in sports and #6 in all games, according to this by downloads, according to App Annie figures for the first half of 2020. As I mentioned, we claim about 250 million monthly active users. Of those, 50 million are active daily. So it's quite a lot of people to keep entertained, and they're always on the lookout for new things. So that's, I think, the challenge for anyone seeking to launch globally. You're really trying to generate the most installations in the shortest amount of time, or you can put it another way: you're pushing all of the hype machine buttons at the same time. Or put it another way, you're trying to bridge the gap in the technical innovation adoption curve. You may have seen this model elsewhere, but it was written about by Geoffrey Moore in his 1991 book, Crossing the Chasm, where he identified this chasm between the early adopters and innovators on the left, and the pragmatist audience. Now, these groups are, as you might call, psychographic profiles. They're the psychological and demographic traits, and they tend to make the marketing responses of people in these groups different. Now, so if you can understand the difference, and I'm sure you're sort of more or less familiar with these ideas, the more you're able to understand the difference, the better you are able as a marketer to target them using the right marketing techniques. The significant gap you've got here is between the innovators and the early adopters, and they're, in our world, the guys who are obsessively trying every title. They're probably in or close to the industry, like this audience, I'd imagine. You're just trying everything that you see. And then you've got the early adopters. These are probably guys you reached in some sort of soft launch. You're maybe advertising to them or reaching them in a certain way, but they're open to trying something new. So they'll see something new and they'll try it. And this is often referred to as the golden cohort, or at least the heart of the golden cohort, those first guys who install your games. But what you're trying to do on a global launch is to take what you learn from those early adopters and refine your product and refine your messaging to reach people who aren't really as involved. They're a broader market, certainly in our case, and they will tend to follow the crowd more. And this is a challenge because these people are looking for signals, marketing signals, from other reference points rather than just people who are purely advertising at them. They tend to take more notice of what the stores are promoting. They tend to certainly take a lot of notice of what other people like themselves, their family and friends, are referring to them in word of mouth. And they may also be under the influence of the idea of a fear of missing out. So they see something become popular, they want to be part of something because of its very sort of perceived popularity. So this is the sort of hardest job. This is certainly the key thing that you're trying to achieve in your global launch. You might say you're trying to land on Pragmatist Beach, and you may be familiar with the film Saving Private Ryan. You may be familiar with this scene representing the Normandy landings on D-Day. And how hard it can be to establish a beachhead to land on an otherwise hostile beach. The better prepared you are, the less likely you're going to get machine gunned before you've even left the boat. So at Miniclip, we have a 6-stage process. Firstly, we work with our marketing teams, the product and marketing teams, to look at the brand positioning and target, and this is going to give us the audience targeting and material that will inform the campaign. We work through a soft launch. This is about sort of 16 weeks out, we think. It can vary. There's a flexible time between the soft launch and reviewing the soft launch results. But in that review of the soft launch results, it's really a green light to whether to go ahead to the global launch. Equally, it could either be a case to extend the soft launch, or indeed a red light to kill the project entirely. But if a project makes it through that process, then we would work much more intensively with our marketing teams, what we call the go-to-market team. We would brief them on the current state of the product and work out with them the assets that we would want to make. Crucially, we would prepare our storefronts and work with the stores to seek featuring. And then in the remaining time, we would seek to refine our product before we got to global launch, or D-Day, if you will. So let's look at that first part. I'm going to refer to a game that we launched this year called Ultimate Golf. It's a third-party publishing project. We worked with our partners at the developers Cinterline and Hip Games. They're based in the United States. They had made, at their own expense, a very strong, effectively soft launchable version of the game. But we started working with them towards the end of last year. And one of the first things we did was look at the brand, the position, and the target audience for the game. So we go through certain exercises. We will look at the competition. So we'll do something like this table where we look at the different games in the market. We'll look at the different features that they report. And obviously we play these games intensively and study them. And we try and find places where our game could be, different to these. So you can see, a lot of features are shared across these titles. In our case with Ultimate Golf, there was one thing that was visually, relatively distinctive, and it was a realistic golf game, and there weren't too many others of those. And we also had a couple of key features which we wanted to call out. We had a game mode which we called Golf Royale, where it's a kind of a competition to get as close to the pin as possible, which was quite distinctive and unique. And we also, quite crucially, differentiating from the leader in the market, Golf Clash, we had simultaneous shooting, so players would play side by side. So these elements were called out and became quite key in our marketing messages, and that's what you're really looking for in this process, to find those key things that you're going to want to call out and communicate to players. We also look at the makeup of the audience, both of our competitors by age and gender. We're lucky enough to have access to Sensor Tower as an analytics platform for that information. We also compare that to some data that we had via some initial market tests for Ultimate Golf. So we can see that we also have a golf game out there, and that players of Ultimate Golf tended to be slightly older than our existing game, probably more skewed male. So we were getting an idea of who the audience were through an exercise like this. Then we did a positioning exercise. So again, we want to know where we are in the market. You know, what sort of sensibilities are we appealing to? And you can apply, you know, whatever quadrant you might like, but we chose the idea of the difference between arcade and realistic and more casualized gameplay or more hardcore gameplay, and we positioned Ultimate Golf away on the right there on the realistic end of the spectrum, but with a certain sort of casual accessibility. As a result of this, we create brand statements, brand values, and these are really the key messages that we'll communicate in our marketing communications, and also guidance about how we want to sort of present and position ourselves in relation to the other titles that are out there. We go so far as to actually identify audience personas or personae, and so we want to try and create for everyone working on the game and in the marketing team, the broader team, some idea of, you know, who they're doing this for. You know, it makes it much more relatable. It makes it easier for us to sort of test our communications ideas, to talk about them. If we think about the response of certain sort of named and visualized individuals, we consider their age, their gender, their location, their occupations, their interests, the other games that they play especially. And also you want to start considering things like, you know, the devices that they might be using, you know, the power of those devices, the connectivity that those guys are going to have, especially as in our case, most of our games are multiplayer games, and so connectivity is usually quite key to the experience. So once we've done that, we generate quite a lot of material, which enables us to begin the soft launch. And the soft launch is done to, from our point of view, ensure certain technical aspects are as good as they can be, ready for a possible global launch. Very key to analyze the player's behavior, their response to the game, to look at some key metrics, retention, monetization, the things and the areas that are in the game that they like or they dislike, and to make experiments, you know, A/B tests around certain aspects of it, A/B tests around certain aspects of the marketing also. We usually allow somewhere between 3 to 6 months. It can be somewhat flexible depending on how much work needs to be done, but it's usually at least 3 months. And so, you know, in that time, we are launching the game in certain territories. I don't think there's any kind of hard and fast rules for this. You see different companies taking different approaches. Usually, I'd say the guiding principle is depending on how you think the game is going to be received, you know, globally. You're probably looking for territories that are not necessarily your key market, but that are sort of culturally representative of that market. Oftentimes, you will find folks, you know, wanting to target particular markets for particular reasons. In our case, obviously, we, you know, have had sort of culturally specific products like Harom, which obviously was very key that we had a good impact in South Asia and the markets which, you know, culturally were most favourable to that game. In other cases, particularly with Ultimate Golf, it was a game that certainly has featured initially American golf courses, played very much to an American audience. And so we tested it out in territories which were sort of culturally similar to America, but without going to America straight away. And as I mentioned, you know, the measurement and the indicators here, retention is key. So you definitely want to get a sense of how well retaining the game is. And obviously, you want that to be as good as possible, especially in the early days. You're going to get a sense of how well monetizing it is from the average revenue per daily active user. Technically, you can see how many concurrent users you can sustain. It's going to give you an idea about that. And you're going to look at how many downloads you manage to generate, how many daily players that you have, and ideally get a sense of what happens to players in the game to make them leave, the churn events. So we're testing through the soft launches. That's really what it's for. Gameplay, trying to get a sense of if the game's fun or not. We're refining things like the controls. We want to test our analytics because we don't want to go to the market and be blind or have faulty reporting. Obviously, we're studying how the game's actually performing. Crucially, we involve our player support teams because they are very much the front line when it comes to any emergent issues. They need to understand the game. They need to report back to the organization how players are responding. And then also our user acquisition, or UA, as it's known, they're starting to test their work. So they're looking at the performance of players who are acquired by paid advertising, and they're also starting to refine their creative work. And usually we find in marketing operations, performance marketing, this is absolutely crucial. Which creatives work best. You want to put a reasonable amount of your attention and energy into advertising intelligence, looking at what your competition are doing, studying, using tools like Facebook's ad library, or if you have access to Sensor Tower or App Annie, there are certain tools there. There are other tools you can use to see how other people are marketing their products, which may be competitive to yours, and it's quite crucial. If the game has advertising, we want to know that ad monetization is working properly, the ad networks are integrated correctly, and that any revenues that are coming from there, which we might be heavily reliant on, are all functioning properly. So in the case of Caron, a short case study here. Here is a view of some of the initial storefront assets that we created. So again, this is a time to test your assets, the screenshots, the messaging that you're putting there, the icons. Google Play, as you know, are particularly helpful as a platform to let developers test the efficacy of these assets, and you can try different versions to see which ones get the best results. In the case of Caron, we did quite a lot of work improving the controls and the physics of the game, which is obviously the moment to moment. The thing that is going to really guarantee whether people are going to keep playing or not. Any technical issues, bugs, fixing those. Some experiments with different starter packs, promotions from the store, using A/B tests to try and find the optimum conversion rate. In this case, we were able to increase that by 50%. That's going to be important when you launch. Introducing new features during that period as well to see how it affected retention. Some leaderboards in there improved the game's retention by 10%. Retention is really critical, I think, because if you're going to invest in globally launching, however much resource you have to invest in that, you don't want to bring players to the game and have them leave, early. So the more optimized the product is to receive and retain players, the better. In Caron's case, we did some work over 3 months to grow the day one retention from 38% to 42%, which is, I would say, relatively strong generally. If we have a retention of 40% day one plus, that's a really good indicator of the game's appeal. And the day 7 indeed grew from 12 to 19%. So again, pretty strong numbers. It gives us confidence that our investment in the global launch is going to be worthwhile. So after the soft launch, you're reviewing the soft launch results. In our case, we get together all the different departments in the organization. We mentioned that there could be flexibility in this timing, and you somewhat need to take as much time as you can to prepare. But once we're confident, we give it a green light. We go and speak to our marketing teams, the go-to-market team, and we broadly are then moving into the process of preparing assets for cross-promotion, assets for store featuring, and assets for user acquisition. We will also have some sense of the plan. So we'll try and lay out for everyone, that this is going to play out. And it's important to realize, important to consider, this is going to play out for a number of weeks. It's not going to just be about the first day. It's not going to be about the first weekend. You're really in a campaign mode for, up to 6 weeks, possibly shorter, possibly longer. But we want to know what the activities are on a week by week basis. We will usually, from paid UA's perspective, be looking to load the budget at the front end to maximize the impact, maximize the installs in that sort of early window of weeks. And we would usually expect it to be reduced over time. We will also fix the way we're going to divide up the spend. As you can imagine, your budget may go less far in the more expensive and competitive territories like the United States. It may be easy to acquire users in other territories, but you need to have a sense of where you're going to spend your money, where you're going to allocate your resources in that way. Miniclip, we're fortunate through our history to have not only mobile games where we can cross-promote various different mechanics. We also have a website, which is still quite an important referrer for installations, and we do quite a lot of work with a particular department in our marketing team on social media as well. So here's an example of how we deal with stuff on miniclip.com. We still have up to 90 million monthly active users, so we would usually on any launch take over the site, make the biggest song and dance we can about a new launch there. We've also been working increasingly with influencers. These activities take place throughout the campaign. We had a particularly successful relationship with Haji Ali on TikTok, the King of Quran here, and this took place after the global launch, but it's an indication of how you want to keep the buzz going, keep interest levels going, keep reaching out to new areas and segments of the market who may not be aware after the initial launch. And this activity was particularly successful. Certainly, we see where perhaps organizations aren't in such a sort of privileged or sort of well-resourced position as us. If you can include influencers in your marketing plans early, you can actually build, a community for your game early as you go. So you're preparing assets, you're presenting to Apple and Google. They basically need details of what your game is, how it's performed. They need certain assets. They want to know about your marketing plans. And platform relationships are very important. So we've been able to get about one feature per day since 2011, given the amount we invest in these relationships. Here's a very quick run through of what we did for golf. So we wanted to make the game look good, call out all of the content and the distinctiveness. We wanted to call out what we'd had as results from soft launch, give the guys some ideas about what the upcoming updates were. And we had some great results. We got number 1 in the sports category in 50 plus countries, including the US and the UK. And from the global launch itself for Ultimate Golf, we were able to get 2 million users in the first 30 days. And here's some visual examples of how we did that based on the abstract that I mentioned earlier on. This is some media coverage from a recent release of a new game called Mini Football, where we got about 10 million installations in the first month, and that led us to around 1 million daily active users. We were very pleased with this launch and this game. This was with our partner Ginworks in Austria. And so it still goes to show, that it's worth reaching out to, again, as part of your marketing campaign to different outlets and giving them material to help you support. So to get to global launch, then the 6 steps we use: brand positioning and target. Important, things to consider for global launch, basically a great soft launch. Review those results, be prepared to kill your project, not go forwards to global launch at that point. Be flexible, don't go too soon. If you have a marketing team and you can utilize them to get ready, make sure they're well informed and they can do their work to prepare the assets. Very key to have as good a relationship as you can get at the stores and fix outstanding issues with your game before the global launch so that everything is ready. And if you're well prepared, then when you try and take on Nazi-occupied Europe, which is the current free-to-play mobile games market, you may look like a clown, but at least you'll be the one holding the pie. That's it. I hope that's okay. Thanks ever so much, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for that, Jamie. This is Arjun here from IGDC. There are a few questions from the panel. Maybe you would want to stop screen sharing so that everyone can, yeah. All right. So thank you. There are a few questions that have come, and we ask a few of you. Do we notice a difference in retention or paying behavior if we soft launch in different countries? If we take Australia or Canada for that matter. This is a question by Joel. So what do you think?
Yes, you'll usually see a different pattern of retention in different territories. This is precisely the indicator of the sort of cultural fit, I guess, for your game. It can also be related to some technical issues. Maybe, say, in the case of a kind of high-end game, it's not going to be great for a territory who might tend to have lower-end devices. So yes, all of this kind of goes into your information about what territories might be more optimal for you to target your marketing at.
Okay, all right. There's a question from Ravi. Does cross promotion, like say take pool to golf for an example, right? So in cases like that, does it play a big? Has Miniclip been extremely successful or has played a big role in taking it forward?
Well, I guess it's an aspect of our operation, a privilege that we have, I suppose, with a privilege perhaps that we've earned. We have all of this roster of games, and some of them reach very large and broad audiences. There's always something of a trade-off, because by referring a player to another game, you're potentially losing them from the original game, potentially. And usually you're trying to consider the value of the player in the other game, compared to their value in the first game. So there are certain mechanisms that we use that we've refined. It is somewhat variable. Sometimes it works very well. Of course, you can imagine, if a game is quite close in feel or gameplay, then it might be easy, so it's easier to move someone perhaps, or recommend to someone who's already playing a golf game to another golf game, or in our case, one player might be referred from pool, because actually physically sort of underlying it, the gameplay they're somewhat similar. In terms of their feel, so it does vary, and we look at that in quite close detail in terms of the marketing metrics, the so-called upper funnel and lower funnel, about how effective that is, and we may adjust, targeting by game or by geo in each of those channels accordingly, and how.
Yeah, that's a problem of plenty to have, right? So anyway. There's a question from Nihal. How to change our strategy if the game needs to be culturally connected with geography?
Well, I suppose it's sort of its own answer. In a way, Caron is a great case in point. There, with the best will in the world, is nowhere near as much interest in that game as there is in South Asia, India specifically, or especially. And so it was sort of the other way around. We wanted to increase our reach to the Asian market. We already are lucky to have lots of players from India, Indonesia, Pakistan, in Bangladesh as well, in a pool. And so it was really just I suppose, a strategic product from our point of view. But
Yeah.
it is sort of somewhat self-limiting. So it's, as hard as we might try, not something that we can really market to any great success, other than to the diaspora, of guys with the right heritage, who know the game, who love the game, as part of their culture, who happen to be resident in the United States, or in the Middle East, or wherever they are.
All right. All right. So the next question is more of a numbers question, and it's what cost do you consider, when you do a global launch versus a soft launch?
In terms of costs, I mean, in soft launch, you are and we are testing marketing, so we're spending some money on marketing. It's obviously almost as little as you can in order to get the data that you require. So it's certainly a very small percentile of what we would end up spending overall in a full global launch. So in a global launch, we may be spending tens of thousands of dollars a day on user acquisition, and we may be doing that for an extended period of time. Whereas in a soft launch, well, I mean, it's sort of how much can you afford, really? But it could be, a few $100s a day, or even a few $100s over the whole, period. It's whatever you can afford to invest there to get the data you need, to be a platform. And I would say, I speak from our position, which is, somewhat rarefied. We're a big organization. We have a lot of resources, and I know it's not like that for most people working in the industry. So obviously we're interested in publishing games. And so if anyone can invest something to do something of a soft launch and to gather some data, then assuming that they're going to need some investor or some supporter, with financial resources like ourselves, or, the investment can come from anywhere. Having that data from a soft launch, however small, is all helpful. It only indicates your sort of business-like approach. It enables that publisher to to make some decisions, and they may choose to support you up to a certain point, to develop the game further, to do more research. But it's very helpful when you're making a case. The further along you can get down that line yourself, the better. Obviously, the further along you can get down that line yourself without taking any investment, the more of the upside that you keep at the end. So, yeah.
Okay. Right. I'm going to club the next two questions. It's almost similar. So it's any creative automation tool that you suggest, and what is the most effective asset for UA method?
We don't have any creative automation at the moment, certainly not as far as I'm aware. So we have teams of people internal to the company who are UA creative specialists, and they basically make as sort of much as we can. And we go through sort of a sort of rinse and repeat kind of process where we try a range of concepts. They may either be suggested by the game itself. They'll be based on ad intelligence. We use the ad library on Facebook. We also use the Sensor Tower tools to look at different ad creative. And you'll know, and also from browsing Facebook, I get a lot of my ideas just from browsing Facebook, or any of the social media channels, how other people are advertising their work, and so you get ideas and inspirations. So a lot of creative work is tried. I think in our case, we've tried about 65 different treatments for Ultimate Golf. You may do some A/B tests, so something that's quite similar but with some variations to see which work better. And you see quite quickly, from the data, which ones work better. The networks themselves are effectively automated tools for sort of testing things, and they will invest your budget for you in the better performing creatives. But creative development is still somewhat sort of labor intensive, I would say, but it is the edge. It is sort of the one lever that you still have to make a difference, both in terms of managing the cost per installation. The better and more successful the creative, the more optimized your campaign is going to be, and really those experiments are really worth doing.
Okay, all right. So one of the last couple of questions is, how effective is an influencer in taking your game, making it grow big? I mean, do you think that it is also location based, or do you think any influencer for a game that is location agnostic does the magic?
Yeah, I guess it depends. As we've seen, influencers can have a terrific impact. I would say, in my experience, um, we tend to engage with influence as sort of paid endorsements. So at that level, obviously, it's then just another part of performance marketing. You're looking to try and make sure it's as optimized as possible. And yeah, you're just trying to find the guys. So maybe with golf, am I looking for guys who are known for doing game videos, or am I looking for guys who are known for doing golfing, like real world golfing videos? And we are trying out a mix of those different things, and that could be interesting because that maybe the gaming influencers are sort of much more attuned, to the sort of market dynamics than maybe some other channels are. So it's good to experiment across the piece, really, to find out who might be interesting. I guess the sort of the greatest thing that can happen, I suppose, is the idea that influencers or streamers pick your game up while you're developing it. It's a way, for an indie developer or someone who doesn't have a sort of huge marketing budget to grow their game somewhat organically. And I suppose that's still, the greatest thing that can happen. And you see that with games like Among Us recently, Fall Guys. Not that they didn't in the end, have marketing resources as well, but if a game has those attributes where it's sort of the gameplay is the right kind of gameplay, funny moments, it's maybe a party game or multiplayer game, and it's appealing to YouTubers. In my experience, again, the sort of marketing preparation around that is those guys need assets too. So you need to engage with those guys. Say, what can I give you to feature it? But it's a marketing activity in the same way that you still have to bridge that chasm, because a lot of YouTubers are not early adopters. They're not innovators. They follow, their business is making videos about successful games that people want to watch the videos of. So you're sort of caught in that same trap often. But sometimes your game, if it is a sort of party game, if it's funny, it creates these moments, or it's crazy or weird. If that's natural for your game, then maybe that's an avenue you're going to be able to create that organic kind of community based upswell.
Right. Okay, that was great, Jamie. So, all right, what's happening with you outside of Miniclip, and what's keeping you going, during times like these?
Well, I have a lovely family, and although we have the lockdown in the UK, it just means there's more time with the family. And so I don't know whether they appreciate more time with me, but I certainly appreciate their love and support. I'm a very keen cyclist, so as is something of a cliche, a middle-aged man in lycra. So I go out with my road racing bike, and I live outside London, so I live somewhat in the country. So roads are quieter, and I, keep fit, and I think of new crazy game ideas while I'm out cycling.
Brilliant, amazing. So thanks a lot, Jamie. They enjoyed. I mean, I'm getting feedback right now. I mean, thank you so much for opening up and talking to us. We really hope to have you next year in India physically. I mean, as much as gaming is virtual, right? I mean, we would want to have a FaceTime also in person sometime to take the conversation ahead. So, thank you so much for doing this, Jamie.
Looks like Jamie got exit. He's gone, I guess. So, anyways, guys, there is another panel that is happening right now. Please join in. There is predictions 2021. It's live now, so you guys can go and watch the content there. So, can you go to the next one?
All right, thank you.